The Metabolic Renaissance, 10 Nutritional Architects of Transformation. In the modern era, the battle against obesity is not merely a struggle of willpower, but a complex physiological war fought in the trenches of the human metabolism. We are drowning in processed noise, yet the antidote lies hidden in plain sight, ancient biological keys capable of unlocking the body's dormant fat-burning machinery. These are not just ingredients, they are tactical tools designed to manipulate satiety hormones, crush inflammation, and rewire the gut-brain axis. We begin our investigative descent into nutritional alchemy with nature's most perfect protein vessel.
The biological genesis, the whole egg. To understand the primacy of the egg in the hierarchy of weight loss nutrition, one must first strip away decades of marketing misinformation, epidemiological confusion, and the fluctuating tides of dietary fashion. We must view the egg not merely as a breakfast staple, but as a biological anomaly, a self-contained life support system designed by evolution to construct a complex living organism from a single cell. This Genesis capsule represents the gold standard of bioavailability, a term that nutritionists use to describe how efficiently the human body can absorb and utilize nutrients. For the obese individual, whose metabolism is often dysregulated and whose body is in a state of chronic inflammation and nutrient deprivation despite caloric excess, the egg offers a corrective reset that is unrivaled in the natural world. For the better part of the late 20th century, the egg was the victim of a grand misunderstood narrative, a casualty of the lipid hypothesis that swept through Western medicine in the 1970s. This era, characterized by a simplistic understanding of heart disease, vilified dietary cholesterol, equating the consumption of a yolk with the immediate clogging of arteries. It was a scientific error of massive proportions that fundamentally altered the American diet, pushing millions toward processed, high-sugar, low-fat alternatives that arguably accelerated the very obesity epidemic we now face. The investigative lens of modern nutritional science has since vindicated the egg. We now understand that for the vast majority of the population, dietary cholesterol has a negligible impact on blood cholesterol levels. The liver, a master regulator, simply downregulates its own cholesterol production when dietary intake increases. By removing eggs from the diet of the overweight population, we stripped away a critical tool for satiety and replaced it with insulin-spiking carbohydrates. The mechanism by which eggs facilitate weight loss in obese individuals is rooted deeply in the endocrinology of appetite. The primary enemy of weight loss is not a lack of willpower, it is the screaming biological signal of hunger. This signal is orchestrated by a complex interplay of hormones, primarily ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and peptide YY, PYY, which signals fullness. When an individual consumes a breakfast dominated by refined carbohydrates, such as a bagel or sugary cereal, blood glucose spikes rapidly, triggering a massive release of insulin. This insulin shuns sugar into fat cells, causing blood glucose to plummet shortly after, which the brain interprets as a survival emergency, triggering intense cravings for more sugar. This is the glucose roller coaster that traps many obese individuals in a cycle of overeating. In stark contrast, the protein profile of the egg acts as a metabolic brake. Clinical studies, including landmark research from the Rochester Center for Obesity Research, have demonstrated that consuming eggs for breakfast induces a sensation of satiety that lasts significantly longer than isocaloric carbohydrate-based meals. This is not a placebo effect, it is a physiological response. The high-quality protein in eggs suppresses ghrelin production more effectively than any other macronutrient source. Furthermore, the digestion of egg protein requires energy, a concept known as the thermic effect of food, or TEF. But the real magic lies in the suppression of subsequent caloric intake. Data suggests that individuals who start their day with eggs inadvertently consume hundreds of fewer calories over the next 36 hours, simply because the biological drive to eat has been dampened. However, the value of the egg extends far beyond simple macronutrients. We must delve into the micronutrient matrix of the yolk, the very component that was demonized for decades. The yolk contains choline, a nutrient that arguably 90% of the American population is deficient in. Choline is the precursor to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for brain function and muscle control, but its role in lipid metabolism is where it becomes critical for the obese patient. Choline is required to synthesize phosphatidylcholine, a molecule necessary for exporting fat from the liver. Without adequate choline, fat accumulates in the liver, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, a condition rampant in the obese population that further hampers metabolic function. By consuming the whole egg, one is essentially providing the liver with the biochemical machinery required to process and transport fats, rather than storing them viscerally. We must also consider the nutrient density to calorie ratio. An obese body is often a starving body, starving for vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty acids, even while drowning in energy. This phenomenon known as hidden hunger drives the appetite as the body seeks to fulfill its nutrient quotas.
A large egg contains only about 70 to 77 calories, but delivers a spectrum of bioactive compounds, including selenium, vitamin D, B12, and the potent antioxidants lutein and zeaxanthin. These antioxidants accumulate in the retina, protecting the eyes, but they also play a systemic role in reducing oxidative stress. Obesity is a state of chronic oxidative stress. The adipose tissue releases inflammatory cytokines that damage cells and disrupt insulin signaling. The egg provides the antioxidant armor necessary to combat this internal fire. Furthermore, the versatility and economic accessibility of eggs cannot be overstated in a socioeconomic analysis of obesity. High-quality nutrition is often gated by high price points. Organic produce, grass-fed beef, and exotic superfoods are often out of reach for lower-income demographics, where obesity rates are statistically higher. The egg remains the most affordable source of high biological value protein on the planet. It democratizes nutrition. It requires no complex cooking skills, no expensive equipment, and minimal preparation time. It bridges the gap between the biological need for premium fuel and the economic reality of the modern consumer. The amino acid profile of the egg is so complete that it is often used as the reference standard against which all other proteins are measured. It scores a perfect 100 on the biological value (BV) scale. This means that nearly every gram of protein ingested is utilized by the body for repair, enzyme production, and muscle maintenance. For the obese individual attempting to lose weight, the preservation of lean muscle mass is paramount. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns calories at rest. Traditional dieting often results in muscle catabolism, where the body breaks down muscle for energy, ultimately slowing the metabolic rate and leading to the dreaded rebound weight gain. The high leucine content in eggs triggers the mTOR pathway, a cellular signal that stimulates muscle protein synthesis, helping to preserve the metabolic engine even while in a caloric deficit. Historically, the egg has been a symbol of potential and renewal across cultures, from the cosmic eggs of ancient mythology to the Easter traditions of the West. Today, it represents a renewal of health. The scientific community has largely pivoted, now recommending the consumption of eggs as part of a heart-healthy diet.
The fear of dietary cholesterol has been replaced by an understanding of the dangers of trans fats and refined sugars. For the obese individual navigating the treacherous waters of weight loss, the egg is a lighthouse, a safe, effective, and scientifically validated harbor. It is a food that works with the body's physiology, not against it, manipulating hormones to favor fat loss and providing the essential building blocks required to reconstruct a healthier, leaner physique. It is the alpha of the nutritional alphabet, the starting point of any serious metabolic intervention. 2. The anabolic anvil, chicken breast, lean protein. If the egg is the genesis of nutritional life, the chicken breast is the industrial steel from which the modern lean physique is constructed. It is the ubiquitous monolith of the fitness world, the undisputed king of body recomposition, and the primary weapon in the arsenal against obesity. While it may lack the culinary romance of a ribeye or the complex flavor profile of fatty fish, the chicken breast commands respect through sheer unadulterated efficiency. It is a nutritional tool sharpened to a razor's edge, designed to sever the link between caloric intake and fat storage. To understand why this specific cut of poultry is enshrined in every weight loss protocol from clinical settings to bodybuilding stages, we must investigate the thermodynamics of digestion, the history of agricultural engineering, and the critical importance of muscle preservation during the catabolic phase of weight loss. The investigation begins with the concept of the thermic effect of food, TEF, a principle of thermodynamics that is often overlooked in simplified calories in, calories out models. Not all calories are created equal. The body must expend energy to process the food we eat. Chewing, digesting, absorbing, transporting, and storing nutrients all require a caloric burn. Fats and carbohydrates are relatively easy for the body to process, with a TEF of roughly 0 to 3% and 5 to 10% respectively. Protein, however, is a metabolic challenge. It is a complex molecule comprising long chains of amino acids held together by peptide bonds. Breaking these bonds require a significant investment of energy. The TEF of lean protein, like chicken breast, sits between 20% and 30%. This means that for every 100 calories of chicken breast consumed, the body burns 20 to 30 calories just to digest it. In essence, the chicken breast is a metabolic furnace. For an obese individual, shifting the diet toward high protein intake effectively boosts the basal metabolic rate, creating a caloric deficit that exists independently of exercise. Beyond thermodynamics, the chicken breast serves as the ultimate guardian of lean muscle mass. One of the great tragedies of rapid weight loss in obese populations is the loss of skeletal muscle. When the body is placed in a caloric deficit, it looks for energy sources. Without sufficient protein intake, the body will cannibalize its own muscle tissue, breaking it down into amino acids to be converted into a glucose via gluconeogenesis. This is a disastrous outcome. Muscle tissue is the primary driver of the resting metabolic rate. Lose the muscle and you slow the metabolism. This is why many dieters plateau and eventually regain the weight. They have compromised their metabolic engine. Chicken breast is densely packed with complete protein, specifically rich in essential amino
amino acids that the body cannot synthesize on its own. Crucially, chicken breast is exceptionally high in leucine, an amino acid that acts as a master switch for muscle protein synthesis. When leucine levels in the blood rise, it signals the body to protect muscle tissue and prioritize the burning of adipose tissue fat for fuel. By consuming chicken breast, the obese individual provides a safety net for their muscle mass, ensuring that weight loss comes primarily from fat stores. This muscle-sparing effect is the cornerstone of sustainable weight management. It transforms the body from a fat-storing vessel into a fat-burning machine. We must also examine the historical and industrial context of the chicken breast to understand its dominance. The bird we eat today is not the bird of our ancestors. In the late 1940s, a contest known as the Chicken of Tomorrow was sponsored by A&P Supermarkets and the USDA. The goal was to engineer a bird with broader breasts and thicker thighs, a meat-producing machine that could feed a booming post-war population. This genetic selection, combined with advancements in feed efficiency, transformed chicken from a luxury item, historically more expensive than beef, into the most accessible lean protein source on Earth. While there are valid criticisms regarding industrial farming practices, the outcome for the consumer was the democratization of lean protein. For the obese demographic, which often overlaps with lower socioeconomic strata, the affordability of chicken breast is a critical factor in its viability as a weight loss staple. It allows for high protein adherence without the prohibitive costs associated with other lean meats like bison or high-quality seafood. The nutritional profile of a skinless, boneless chicken breast is almost architectural in its simplicity. A standard 3.5-ounce serving contains approximately 31 grams of protein and only 3.6 grams of fat with 0 carbohydrates. It is pure structural material. This lack of fat and carbohydrates allows for precise manipulation of macronutrients. In a culinary context, the chicken breast is a white canvas. Because it has a mild flavor and a fibrous texture, it can absorb the flavors of spices, herbs, and marinades without adding significant calories. This versatility is vital for psychological adherence to a diet. Obesity is often tied to the dopamine response derived from hyperpalatable foods. While chicken breast itself is not hyperpalatable in the way a cheeseburger is, its ability to carry flavor allows dieters to enjoy a variety of cuisines, from curry to Cajun to Mediterranean, while maintaining a strict nutritional profile. It prevents the diet fatigue that causes so many to quit. Furthermore, the high protein content of chicken breast contributes to satiety in a different yet complementary way to eggs. The digestion of dense meat fibers physically slows gastric emptying. The stomach remains distended for longer, sending mechanical signals of fullness to the brain via the vagus nerve. Additionally, the presence of amino acids in the small intestine triggers the release of cholecystokinin, CCK, and glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, hormones that potently inhibit appetite. In an era where pharmaceutical GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic are dominating the conversation around obesity, it is worth remembering that protein is nature's way of stimulating these same pathways, albeit to a more modest, natural degree. A lunch centered around chicken breast can effectively eliminate the mid-afternoon cravings that typically drive snacking on processed foods. However, the consumption of chicken breast is not without its caveats. The very leanness that makes it effective for weight loss can make it dry and unappetizing if prepared poorly, leading to the use of high-calorie sauces that negate its benefits. The investigative dieter must learn the techniques of preparation, brining, slow cooking, or sous vide that retain moisture without adding fat. Moreover, one must be wary of the health halo surrounding processed chicken products. Nuggets, tenders, and deli slices are often laden with sodium, fillers, and breading that transform a weight loss superfood into a metabolic bomb. The recommendation here is strictly for the whole, unprocessed muscle. There is also a psychological dimension to the chicken breast. It has become a meme.
A trope of the bro-science bodybuilder diet, Tupperware containers filled with dry chicken and broccoli. But this stereotype exists for a reason. It works with ruthless consistency. For the obese individual, embracing the chicken breast requires a shift in mindset. It is a move away from food as entertainment and toward food as fuel. It represents a commitment to function over form. It is the acceptance that in the battle against obesity, one needs reliable weapons. The chicken breast is the infantry of the diet war, reliable, effective, and capable of holding the line against the encroachment of adipose tissue. In the grand scope of human nutrition, few foods have had a significant impact on physical culture as the chicken breast. It fueled the fitness boom of the 1980s, the low-carb craze of the early 2000s, and the current focus on high-protein, whole-food diets. For the obese person, it offers a path out of metabolic dysfunction. It provides the essential substrates for life without the energy surplus that leads to fat storage. It maximizes the thermic effect, spares vital muscle tissue, and satiates the appetite through powerful hormonal signaling. It is not an exciting food, but it is a foundational one. It is the concrete slab upon which a new, lighter, and healthier body is built, brick by brick, gram by gram.
3. The oceanic paradox, salmon and the fat that burns fat.
To the uninitiated dieter, the inclusion of salmon, a fish renowned for its high fat content, in a weight loss protocol seems counterintuitive, perhaps even contradictory. For decades, the nutritional zeitgeist was dominated by a phobia of lipids, a simplistic calculus that equated dietary fat directly with adipose tissue. This reductionist view, however, failed to distinguish between the clogging trans fats of industrial processing and the essential life-giving lipids found in the cold waters of the Northern Hemisphere. Salmon represents the oceanic paradox, the consumption of specific fats to facilitate the burning of body fat. For the obese individual whose metabolic machinery is often jammed by insulin resistance and chronic inflammation, salmon is not merely a source of calories, it is a pharmaceutical-grade intervention delivered by nature, rich in long-chain omega-3 fatty acids that act as master regulators of human metabolism. The investigation into salmon's efficacy begins at the cellular level, specifically with the cell membrane. Every cell in the human body is encased in a lipid bilayer, a skin made of fat that dictates what enters and exits the cell. In the obese phenotype, these membranes are often rigid and dysfunctional, composed largely of saturated fats and inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids derived from processed seed oils. This rigidity impairs insulin signaling. Insulin, the hormone responsible for shuttling glucose from the blood into the cells for energy, knocks on the door, but the cell cannot open it. The pancreas responds by pumping out more insulin, leading to hyperinsulinemia, a state that locks the body into fat storage mode. The eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, found abundantly in salmon are fluid, flexible molecules. When integrated into the cell membrane, they increase permeability and fluidity. They essentially grease the locks of the metabolic doors, restoring insulin sensitivity. For the obese patient, this is the holy grail, lowering baseline insulin levels so that the body can finally access its stored fat reserves for energy. However, the role of salmon extends beyond simple mechanics into the realm of immunology. Obesity is now understood by the medical community not just as a storage issue, but as a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, often termed meta-inflammation. Adipose tissue,
Particularly the visceral fat surrounding the organs, is biologically active. It behaves like a rogue organ, secreting pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin-6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-alpha. This internal fire damages tissues, disrupts hormonal signaling, and promotes further weight gain in a vicious cycle. The omega-3s in salmon are the body's primary fire extinguishers. They are the precursors to specialized pro-resolving mediators, SPMs, molecules that actively resolve inflammation and return tissues to homeostasis. By consuming salmon regularly, the obese individual is essentially flooding their system with anti-inflammatory agents, dampening the cytokine storm and allowing the metabolic system to recover. We must also consider the specific protein profile of salmon compared to terrestrial meats. While chicken breast provides pure structure, salmon provides structure coupled with metabolic enhancement. The protein density is high, contributing to the same thermic effect in satiety discussed previously. The presence of healthy fats delays gastric emptying even further. This produces a sustained release of energy, avoiding the crash that often follows low-fat meals. Furthermore, salmon is a rich source of iodine and selenium, two trace minerals that are absolutely critical for thyroid function. The thyroid gland is the thermostat of the body, dictating the basal metabolic rate. Many obese individuals suffer from subclinical hypothyroidism, or sluggish thyroid output. Selenium, in particular, is required to convert the inactive thyroid hormone, T4, into the active form, T3, which drives metabolism. Without these minerals, the metabolic engine runs cold. Salmon helps turn the dial back up. The distinction between wild-caught and farmed salmon is a subject of intense debate and investigation within the nutritional community. Wild salmon, such as sockeye or chinook, swim thousands of miles against rigorous currents, resulting in a leaner muscle profile and a higher density of nutrients derived from a natural diet of krill and plankton. This diet gives them their vibrant red hue, caused by astaxanthin, a potent antioxidant that has been shown to improve lipid metabolism and reduce oxidative stress. Farmed salmon, while still nutritionally valuable, often has a higher total fat content and a different omega-3 to omega-6 ratio due to grain-based feeds, while wild is the gold standard.
The consensus among obesity researchers is that the benefits of consuming any salmon outweigh the negatives of consuming none. The priority is the introduction of marine-based fatty acids into a diet that is likely deficient in them. There is also a profound neurological component to the consumption of fatty fish that is often overlooked in weight loss discussions. The human brain is approximately 60% fat, and DHA is its preferred building block. Obesity has a high comorbidity with depression and anxiety, conditions that often drive emotional eating. A brain starved of healthy fats is a brain in distress, prone to impulse control failures and mood instability. Studies have linked low omega-3 levels with reduced dopamine production and impaired function in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain
brain responsible for willpower and decision-making. By nourishing the brain with the lipids found in salmon, one may essentially be upgrading the hardware required to maintain the discipline of a weight loss regimen. It stabilizes the mood, reducing the urge to self-medicate with sugar and processed carbohydrates. In the historical context, the shift away from marine-based diets correlates strongly with the rise of modern obesity. Anthropological evidence suggests that the rapid expansion of the human brain during evolution coincided with the exploitation of aquatic food sources. We evolved to thrive on these fats. The modern Western diet, with its ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 often skewing 20-1 opposed to the ancestral 1-1, represents a profound evolutionary mismatch. Reintroducing salmon is an attempt to realign our modern biology with our ancestral genetics. It is a return to the fuel source that helped engineer our physiology in the first place. Furthermore, recent research has illuminated the role of salmon consumption in the activation of brown adipose tissue, BAT. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat burns energy to generate heat. It is metabolically active and desirable. Omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to stimulate the browning of white fat cells, effectively converting storage depots into calorie-burning furnaces. This thermogenic effect, while subtle, accumulates over time, providing a metabolic edge that can be the difference between stagnation and progress for an obese individual. The culinary application of salmon also supports long-term adherence. Its richness means that it feels indulgent.
A perfectly seared fillet of salmon does not feel like diet food in the pejorative sense. It satisfies the palate's desire for fat and umami, triggering the release of satiety hormones like cholecystokinin, CCK, more effectively than low-fat proteins. This sensory satisfaction is crucial. Deprivation is the enemy of consistency. If a diet feels like punishment, it will fail. Salmon allows the dieter to enjoy a meal that feels luxurious while simultaneously stripping away visceral fat. As we look toward the future of nutrition, the sustainability of salmon stocks is a valid concern, leading to the development of aquaculture technologies and even algae-based omega-3 supplements. However, for the current moment, the whole fish remains the superior delivery system. It is a complex matrix of protein, bioactive peptides, vitamins like the elusive vitamin D, and essential fats that work in synergy. You cannot simply take a fish oil pill and expect the same results as eating the fillet. The matrix matters. For the obese person fighting a war on multiple fronts, inflammation, insulin resistance, appetite dysregulation, and psychological stress, salmon is one of the most potent allies available in the natural world. It turns the tide by using fat to fight fat, a biological jujitsu that dismantles obesity from the inside out. 4. The microbiome architect, Greek yogurt unsweetened. If salmon addresses the chemical composition of the body, Greek yogurt addresses the biological ecosystem that resides within it. We are now entering the frontier of the second brain, the gut microbiome. In the last 2 decades, scientific understanding of obesity has shifted radically from a simple caloric equation to a complex interaction between the host and the trillions of bacteria living in the digestive tract. We now know that the microbiome of an obese individual is fundamentally different from that of a lean individual, characterized by a lack of diversity and an overgrowth of energy-harvesting bacteria. Greek yogurt, specifically the strained, unsweetened variety, is not merely a snack. It is a tactical weapon used to reseed this terrain, repair the gut lining, and restore the communication lines between the stomach and the brain. The defining characteristic of Greek yogurt, which distinguishes it from its conventional counterparts, lies in the manufacturing process known as stragisto. This straining process removes the liquid whey and lactose, resulting in a product that is thicker, creamier, and significantly more concentrated in protein. While a standard yogurt might offer 6 grams of protein per serving, a high-quality Greek yogurt can deliver 15 to 20 grams. This protein density is critical for the obese demographic for reasons we have established, thermogenesis and satiety. However, the specific type of protein in yogurt, primarily casein, deserves special attention. Casein is a slow-digesting protein. Unlike whey, which hits the bloodstream rapidly, casein coagulates in the stomach, forming a gel that releases amino acids slowly over several hours. This makes Greek yogurt an exceptional tool for appetite control, particularly in preventing late-night snacking, a common pitfall for those with obesity. But the true power of this food lies in its bacterial payload. The live and active cultures, typically strains of Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus, are probiotics that directly influence the gut environment. Research has identified a distinct obese microbiome profile, often dominated by the Firmicutes phylum of bacteria, which are incredibly efficient at extracting calories from indigestible fibers. In contrast, lean individuals tend to have more bacteroides. By introducing the beneficial bacteria found in Greek yogurt, one can begin to shift this ratio.
These probiotics produce short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, which nourish the cells of the colon, reduce gut permeability, leaky gut, and signal the release of GLP-1 and PYY, the very hormones that tell the brain, stop eating. The connection between the gut and the brain, known as the gut-brain axis, is a primary highway for weight regulation. An unhealthy gut sends distress signals that the brain often interprets as anxiety or hunger. Dysbiosis, bacterial imbalance, can lead to systemic inflammation and insulin resistance. The probiotics in Greek yogurt help to quell this internal riot. Furthermore, fermented foods like yogurt improve the bioavailability of other nutrients. They pre-digest certain compounds, making it easier for a compromised digestive system to absorb minerals like magnesium and zinc, which are often deficient in obese populations. We must also investigate the calcium paradox. For years, it was believed that dairy might contribute to weight gain due to its caloric density. However, large-scale epidemiological studies consistently showed an inverse relationship. People who ate more yogurt weighed less. The mechanism appears to involve intracellular calcium. When calcium levels in fat cells are low, the cell senses a deficit and triggers the synthesis of fatty acids. It hoards fat. Conversely, high levels of serum calcium, such as those provided by yogurt, suppress this synthesis and increase lipolysis, fat breakdown. Additionally, calcium binds to fatty acids in the digestive tract, creating insoluble soaps that cannot be absorbed and are excreted from the body. In this way, Greek yogurt literally prevents a portion of dietary fat from ever entering the bloodstream. The texture and mouthfeel of Greek yogurt also play a significant underappreciated role in satiety mechanics rheology. The thickness of the product requires more oral processing and coats the mouth, providing a sensory richness that mimics high-fat foods. This is vital for the psychological aspect of dieting. Many obese individuals struggle with the loss of creamy textures when cutting out processed sauces and desserts. Greek yogurt serves as a versatile, healthy substitute. It can replace sour cream on a taco, mayonnaise in a tuna salad, or heavy cream in a soup. This versatility allows for a reduction in caloric density without a reduction in sensory pleasure, which is the key to long-term diet adherence. However,
the modern supermarket aisle presents a minefield. The commercialization of Greek yogurt has led to the proliferation of dessert yogurts, products loaded with cane sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and fruit purees that strip away the fiber and add massive glycemic load. A single cup of flavored yogurt can contain as much sugar as a candy bar, spiking insulin and feeding the very bad bacteria the probiotics are meant to displace. The investigative consumer must be vigilant, selecting only plain, unsweetened varieties. The tartness of plain yogurt is a flavor profile that the modern palate, addicted to hypersweetness, must relearn. This reacclimatization to sour and fermented flavors is part of the rehabilitation of the palate, reducing the threshold for sweetness and curbing sugar cravings over time. Historically, yogurt is an ancient food, a staple of the Mediterranean and Middle Eastern diets for millennia. Its longevity in human culture suggests an evolutionary compatibility. The centenarians of the blue zones, areas with the longest life expectancies, often consume fermented dairy daily. It wasn't until the early 2000s that Greek yogurt exploded onto the American market, largely driven by the brand Chobani, transforming from a niche health food store item to a dominant dairy category. This shift represents a positive trend in American nutrition, a move away from sugary, low-fat fillers toward high-protein, functional foods. Furthermore, the lactose content in Greek yogurt is significantly lower than in regular milk, making it accessible to those with mild lactose intolerance, a condition that affects a large percentage of the global population. The straining process removes much of the milk sugar, and the live bacteria consume a portion of what remains. This makes it a safe vehicle for dairy protein and calcium for those who would otherwise bloat or suffer inflammation from milk. In the context of an obesity intervention, Greek yogurt acts as a bridge. It bridges the gap between meals with its slow-digesting casein. It bridges the gap between the gut and the brain with its probiotic signaling, and it bridges the gap between the desire for creamy indulgence and the need for caloric restriction. It is a living food, teeming with microscopic allies that work on the host's behalf. To eat Greek yogurt is to deploy an army of billions into the digestive tract, tasked with renovating the microbiome, reducing inflammation,
and optimizing the extraction of energy. It turns the gut from a liability into an asset. The future of yogurt likely lies in precision probiotics, yogurts engineered or selected to contain specific bacterial strains tailored to an individual's genomic or microbiome profile. We may soon see metabolic yogurts prescribed by doctors, but until that day arrives, the standard, strained, plain Greek yogurt remains one of the most accessible and effective tools for weight management. It is a testament to the power of fermentation, transforming simple milk into a complex, bioactive superfood that supports the obese body in its journey toward homeostasis and health. It is white gold in a plastic cup, a daily dose of biological reinforcement.
5. The viscous guardian, oats, the beta-glucan matrix. In the tumultuous landscape of modern nutrition, where carbohydrates have been demonized, vilified, and often indiscriminately purged from diet plans, the humble oat stands as a defiant exception, a nutritional monolith that challenges the binary narrative of good versus bad macros. To categorize oats merely as a carbohydrate is a scientific oversimplification that ignores their complex biochemical architecture.
For the obese individual, whose metabolic system is often besieged by erratic blood sugar spikes and insatiable hunger, the oat is not just a grain, it is a regulatory device. It is a tool of physiological stabilization. While the ketogenic and carnivore movements have declared war on starches, the investigative lens reveals that oats, particularly in their less processed forms, possess a unique property that acts as a natural gastric band, beta-glucan. The investigation into the power of oats begins with physics, specifically the physics of viscosity. When oats are subjected to liquid and heat, they do not merely soften, they transform. They release beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that dissolves in water to form a thick, gel-like substance. This is not a trivial culinary side effect, it is a potent biological mechanism. When this viscous gel enters the stomach of an obese individual, it physically alters the mechanics of digestion. It increases the distension of the stomach wall, triggering mechanoreceptors that send immediate signals of fullness to the brain via the vagus nerve. But its work does not stop there. As the gel moves into the small intestine, it coats the intestinal lining, creating a physical barrier that slows down the absorption of nutrients, particularly glucose. This slowing effect is the antidote to the glucose toxicity that plagues those with obesity and type 2 diabetes. When a typical refined carbohydrate, say white toast, is consumed, it is rapidly broken down into sugar, flooding the bloodstream. The pancreas panics, dumping massive amounts of insulin to clear the sugar. This insulin spike shuts down fat burning and promotes fat storage. Oats, protected by their beta-glucan armor, release their energy in a slow, steady drip. They flatten the glucose curve. For the obese patient, this means the avoidance of the postprandial crash, the lethargy and intense craving for sugar that typically occurs 90 minutes after a standard breakfast. By stabilizing blood sugar, oats stabilize the will to diet. We must also examine the oat through the lens of history and sociology. The famous 18th century lexicographer Samuel Johnson once disparagingly defined oats as a grain, which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. The Scotsman's retort, that is why England has such good horses and Scotland has such fine men, hints at an anthropological truth. Historically, populations that relied on slow-digesting, unrefined grains maintained robust health and lean physiques despite high caloric intakes. The oat was the fuel of the laborer, the warrior, and the survivor. It is only in the modern era, with the advent of instant processing, that we have corrupted this ancient grain. Here lies the critical distinction that the investigative dieter must understand, the hierarchy of processing. Not all oats are created equal. Steel-cut oats or Irish oats are whole groats chopped into pieces. They take the longest to digest and have the lowest glycemic index. Rolled oats are steamed and flattened, slightly increasing their surface area and digestion speed. Instant oats, however, are pre-cooked, dried, and pressed so thin that they digest almost as rapidly as sugar. The instant oat packet, often laden with added maple syrup and flavorings, is a Trojan horse, a health food in name, but a metabolic disruptor in practice. For the obese individual seeking transformation, the return to steel-cut or thick-rolled oats is non-negotiable. It is a rejection of convenience in favor of efficacy. Beyond blood sugar, oats play a pivotal role in lipid management, a primary concern for obese individuals, who often suffer from dyslipidemia, high cholesterol. The beta-glucan gel binds to bile acids in the intestine. Bile acids are made from cholesterol. When the gel traps these acids and excretes them from the body, the liver is forced to pull cholesterol from the bloodstream to manufacture new bile. This process, known as bile acid sequestration, naturally lowers LDL, bad cholesterol. It is a mechanical cleaning of the cardiovascular system. In a world where statins are prescribed by the millions, oats offer a dietary adjunct that works in synergy with the body's natural waste disposal systems. Furthermore, we must explore the emerging science of the microbiome and resistant starch. When oats are cooked and then cooled, as in the popular overnight oats preparation,
A portion of the starch undergoes retrogradation, turning into resistant starch. This type of starch resists digestion in the small intestine and travels intact to the colon, where it feeds the beneficial bacteria. These bacteria ferment the starch into short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, specifically butyrate. Butyrate is a miracle molecule for the obese gut. It strengthens the gut barrier, reduces systemic inflammation, and has been shown in animal models to stimulate the release of GLP-1, the satiety hormone. Thus, a bowl of oats is not just feeding the human, it is feeding the trillions of microbial allies that regulate the human's metabolism. The psychological component of oat consumption should not be underestimated. In the context of a restrictive diet, the sensation of warmth and comfort is often lost. Diets tend to be cold: salads, shakes, raw vegetables. Oats provide a hot, comforting, and texturally satisfying meal that mimics the comfort foods many obese individuals use for emotional regulation. This thermal satisfaction can be a powerful anchor in a daily routine. It provides a psychological safe space at the start of the day, a meal that feels substantial and grounding, yet contributes to a caloric deficit. However, the modern oat industry is fraught with contamination issues that require vigilance. The widespread use of glyphosate, a herbicide, on non-organic oat crops has raised alarm bells in the health community. Glyphosate has been linked to disruption of the gut microbiome, the very thing oats are supposed to protect. Therefore, the recommendation for the obese population, whose detoxification pathways may already be overburdened, is strictly for organic oats. This is an investment in purity. As we look to the future, the oat has transcended the bowl. We are seeing the rise of oat milk and oat-based versional foods. While these innovations speak to the popularity of the grain, they often strip away the fiber and leave behind the starch, creating a liquid sugar that can be detrimental to weight loss. The investigative conclusion is clear. The magic is in the matrix. It is the whole intact structure of the oat, the resistance it offers to the digestive enzymes, and the physical bulk of the fiber that confers the benefit. In the grand nutritional strategy for obesity, oats act as the casing mechanism. They set the metabolic tempo for the day. By starting the morning with a slow-burning fuel,
the individual prevents the insulin roller coaster before it even leaves the station. They provide a sustained release of energy that supports physical activity, the very movement required to burn fat. They are the quiet, reliable workhorse of the pantry, unglamorous but undeniably effective. They remind us that the solution to modern metabolic disease is often found in the wisdom of the past, in the simple, unadulterated grains that sustained generations before the obesity epidemic began.
6. The volumetric paradigm, leafy greens, spinach, kale, lettuce. If oats are the regulators of time, leafy greens are the masters of space. In the architectural blueprint of a weight loss diet, leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, arugula, and lettuces serve as the foundational volume. They address one of the most primal and difficult hurdles in the treatment of obesity, the psychological and physiological need to eat a significant quantity of food. For the obese individual whose stomach capacity may be enlarged and whose hunger signals are often dysregulated, the concept of portion control can feel like starvation. The volumetric theory of nutrition posits that satiety is determined more by the weight and volume of food consumed than by the calorie content. Leafy greens are the ultimate hack in this system, allowing the individual to consume massive, overflowing plates of food for a negligible caloric cost, effectively tricking the brain into satisfaction. The investigation into leafy greens must move beyond the banal advice to eat your salad and delve into the specific bioactive mechanisms that make these plants metabolic powerhouses. We begin with the concept of caloric density. Leafy greens are comprised primarily of water and cellulose, fiber. A cup of spinach contains merely 7 calories. One could theoretically eat a bucket of spinach and consume fewer calories than are found in a single glazed donut. This allows for the phenomenon of crowding out. By preloading a meal with a massive volume of greens, the physical space in the stomach is occupied. The stomach walls stretch, firing the mechanoreceptors that signal the hypothalamus to downregulate hunger. This is a mechanical intervention that requires no willpower. It is simple displacement. But the science of greens goes deeper, specifically into the cellular structures of the plants themselves. Recent research from Sweden has highlighted the role of thylakoids, membrane structures found inside the chloroplasts of green leaves like spinach. These thylakoids have been shown to bind to dietary fats and delay their digestion. This delay allows the fat to reach the distal part of the intestine, where it triggers a potent release of satiety hormones like cholecystokinin, CCK. Clinical trials have demonstrated that thylakoid extracts can reduce cravings for sweet and savory foods by up to 95% and increase weight loss over time. For the obese individual battling the intense,
Dopamine-driven urges of food addiction, spinach is not just a vegetable, it is a craving-suppressant drug. We must also analyze the micronutrient density relative to the hidden hunger hypothesis. As previously established, many obese individuals are paradoxically malnourished, overfed in energy, but starving for nutrients. This deficiency drives appetite as the body hunts for essential minerals. Leafy greens are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet per calorie. They are the primary delivery systems for magnesium, a mineral involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions, including the regulation of insulin and glucose. Low magnesium levels are strongly correlated with insulin resistance and visceral fat accumulation. By flooding the body with magnesium-rich greens like Swiss chard and spinach, one helps to resensitize the insulin receptors, allowing the body to properly partition energy rather than store it. Furthermore, leafy greens are rich in dietary nitrates, compounds that the body converts into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It relaxes and widens blood vessels, improving blood flow. Obesity is a state of vascular constriction and hypertension. Improved blood flow means better delivery of oxygen to tissues, including muscle tissue during exercise. This nitrate boost can enhance exercise tolerance, allowing the obese individual to move more and burn more calories. It is a performance enhancer harvested from the garden. The cultural trajectory of leafy greens is a fascinating study in marketing and perception. For decades, greens like kale were used primarily as garnish, decoration for salad bars, meant to be discarded. The kale boom of the early 2010s represented a cultural shift, turning a bitter, fibrous leaf into a status symbol of health. However, for the general obese population, the bitterness of dark leafy greens can be a barrier. This is where the culinary investigation becomes crucial. The difference between a slimy, boiled clump of spinach and a crisp, well-dressed salad or a hidden handful in a smoothie is the difference between adherence and failure. The rise of the green smoothie has been a pivotal tool, allowing individuals to ingest large quantities of greens without the fatigue of chewing through fibrous cell walls. Blending ruptures the cellular matrix, making the nutrients more bioavailable, although it does reduce the digestive thermic effect slightly. We must also confront the anti-nutrient controversy.
Critics often point to the presence of oxalates in spinach and goitrogens in kale as reasons to avoid these foods. For the vast majority of the population, these concerns are overstated, particularly when the greens are cooked, which deactivates many of these compounds. However, for an obese individual with a history of kidney stones or thyroid dysfunction, rotation is key. Alternating between low oxalate greens like arugula and lettuce and high oxalate greens like spinach mitigates risk. The benefits, massive antioxidant load, fiber, and volume, far outweigh the theoretical risks for the general population. The iceberg illusion is another pitfall to avoid. Many dieters believe they are consuming greens when they eat iceberg lettuce. While iceberg provides hydration, it is nutritionally vacuous compared to its dark green cousins. The pigment is the medicine. The chlorophyll, the lutein, the zeaxanthin, these compounds give the leaf its color and the human body its protection against oxidative stress. Obesity creates a high oxidative environment. The antioxidants in dark greens act as scavengers, neutralizing the free radicals produced by excess adipose tissue. In a futuristic context, the production of leafy greens is undergoing a revolution via vertical farming and hydroponics. These technologies allow greens to be grown in urban centers, free from soil-based pesticides and with optimized nutrient profiles. We are approaching an era of prescription greens, lettuce strains engineered to have higher levels of specific therapeutic compounds. But even today, the grocery store produce section offers the most powerful pharmaceutical against obesity available without a prescription. The psychological impact of the big salad cannot be overstated. It allows the dieter to escape the feeling of deprivation. Sitting down to a mixing bowl-sized portion of food sends a visual signal of abundance to the brain. It disrupts the scarcity mindset that often triggers binge eating. It allows for the ritual of eating, the chewing, the tasting, the time spent at the table to continue, but shifts the substrate from calorie-dense processed foods to water-dense fiber matrices. Ultimately, leafy greens are the free currency of the weight loss economy. They are the one food group where more is better. They act as a scrub brush for the digestive tract, a multivitamin for the blood, and a volume filler for the stomach. For the obese person, they are the safety net.
When hunger strikes, greens are the answer that does not sabotage the goal. They transform the biology of the gut, feed the microbiome, and provide the essential cofactors required for the metabolic machinery to turn on and stay on. They are the non-negotiable bedrock of a lean future. The detoxification engine, broccoli and cruciferous vegetables. To classify the family Brassicaceae, which includes broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and kale, merely as vegetables is to commit a gross scientific understatement. In the investigative hierarchy of nutritional biochemistry, these plants are more accurately described as pharmacological agents. For the obese individual, whose body is often a reservoir of environmental toxins, inflammatory markers, and dysregulated hormones, cruciferous vegetables serve as the primary detoxification engine. They are not simply low-calorie fillers, they are the keys to the body's Phase 2 detoxification pathways, a complex enzymatic process that is often sluggish in those carrying excess adipose tissue. The investigation into why these specific plants are non-negotiable for weight loss takes us into the realms of genetic engineering, cancer research, and the very specific binary weapon system these plants evolved for self-defense. The central protagonist in the cruciferous narrative is a sulfur-containing compound called sulforaphane. It is arguably the most potent naturally occurring inducer of liver detoxification enzymes known to man. However, sulforaphane does not exist in the intact vegetable. It is the product of a violent chemical reaction. The plant cells contain a precursor called glucoraphanin and an enzyme called myrosinase, kept in separate compartments. When the plant is damaged, chewed by an insect or chopped by a knife, the walls break, the enzyme mixes with the precursor, and sulforaphane is created. This is the plant's defense mechanism, a mustard oil bomb designed to repel pests. When humans ingest this compound, it triggers a mild stress response in our cells, known as hormesis. This stress signal wakes up the NRF2 pathway, a genetic switch that turns on over 200 genes responsible for antioxidant protection and the excretion of toxins. For the obese patient, this mechanism is critical because adipose tissue is not inert storage, it is a bioaccumulator. Lipophilic, fat-loving toxins from the environment, pesticides, plastics, and heavy metals, are stored in body fat. As an individual begins to lose weight and burn fat, these toxins are released back into the bloodstream, potentially causing diet crash symptoms and stalling metabolism. The liver must process this toxic load. Sulforaphane acts as the foreman of the liver's cleaning crew,
upregulating the production of glutathione, the body's master antioxidant, ensuring that these mobilized toxins are rendered water-soluble and safely excreted. Without the support of cruciferous vegetables, rapid weight loss can essentially poison the metabolic system with its own waste. Beyond detoxification, we must confront the hormonal reality of obesity, specifically the issue of estrogen dominance. Adipose tissue contains an enzyme called aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen. This creates a vicious cycle. Excess fat creates excess estrogen, and excess estrogen promotes the storage of more fat, particularly in the visceral area and the lower body. This phenomenon affects both men and women. Cruciferous vegetables contain indole-3-carbinol, I3C, and its metabolite, diindolylmethane, DIM. These compounds are potent modulators of estrogen metabolism. The liver can process estrogen down several pathways. One pathway, 16-alpha-hydroxyestrone, is proliferative and dirty, linked to cancer and fat gain. The other, 2-hydroxyestrone, is clean and protective. I3C and DIM actively push the liver to choose the clean pathway, effectively helping the obese body flush out excess estrogen. This hormonal rebalancing is often the missing link for patients who are stuck in a weight loss plateau, despite caloric restriction. The history of these vegetables is a testament to human ingenuity and the power of artificial selection. Every major cruciferous vegetable we eat today, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collard greens, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, descends from a single wild plant, Brassica oleracea, or wild mustard. Over thousands of years, farmers selectively bred this plant for different traits. They bred for larger leaves to get kale. They bred for flower buds to get broccoli and cauliflower. They bred for the stem to get kohlrabi. This botanical lineage means they all share the same DNA toolkit, specifically the sulfur-rich compounds that give them their distinctive, pungent aroma. In ancient Rome, Drusus, the son of the Emperor Tiberius, was so obsessed with these plants that he was chastised for his vegetable gluttony, a vice that ironically likely kept him leaner than his grain-consuming contemporaries. The caloric mathematics of cruciferous vegetables are also staggeringly favorable for weight loss. A cup of chopped broccoli contains roughly 30 calories, but requires significant mechanical energy to chew and digest.
The high fiber content, both soluble and insoluble, acts as an internal scrub brush. Insoluble fiber adds bulk to the stool and speeds up transit time, crucial for removing waste products. Soluble fiber feeds the microbiome, but unlike the soft fiber of oats, the fibrous matrix of broccoli is tough. It demands oral processing time. You cannot inhale broccoli. You must chew it. This extends the duration of the meal, allowing the satiety hormones, leptin and PYY, time to signal the brain that the body is being fed. In a world of hyper-palatable, soft, ultra-processed foods that melt in the mouth, the crunch of raw or lightly steamed crucifers is a necessary break on consumption. However, the preparation of these vegetables is where science meets the kitchen and where many dieters fail. The enzyme myrosinase, the spark that creates the magic sulforaphane, is heat-sensitive. Boiling broccoli for 10 minutes destroys the enzyme, effectively neutralizing its most potent metabolic benefits. The investigative cooking method is the hack-and-hold technique. By chopping the broccoli and letting it sit for 40 minutes before cooking, you allow the myrosinase to react with the glucoraphanin, creating the heat-stable sulforaphane. Once the reaction is complete, you can cook the vegetable without losing the medicine. Alternatively, adding a pinch of raw mustard powder, which contains active myrosinase, to cooked broccoli can resurrect the chemical reaction. This level of culinary chemistry transforms a side dish into a medical intervention. There is also the matter of the bitter gene. A significant portion of the population carries the TAS2R38 gene, which makes them super tasters, highly sensitive to the bitter compounds glucosinolates in cruciferous vegetables. For these individuals, broccoli can taste chemically repulsive. This is an evolutionary hangover. In the wild, bitterness often signaled toxicity. For the obese patient with this genetic disposition, the strategy involves masking, roasting the vegetables to caramelize the natural sugars, using acids like lemon juice to cut the bitterness, or incorporating them into purees can bypass the taste buds while delivering the payload. Furthermore, we must address the goitrogen myth. For decades, doctors advised those with thyroid issues to avoid cruciferous, fearing they would interfere with iodine uptake. While technically true that raw crucifers contain goitrogens,
modern research indicates that one would need to consume immense, unrealistic quantities of raw kale to negatively impact a thyroid that is iodine sufficient. Cooking neutralizes the majority of these compounds. Given the obesity-fighting power of these vegetables, the benefits vastly outweigh the theoretical risks, provided the patient is consuming adequate iodine, perhaps from the salmon discussed in entry number 3. In the context of the future of food, vertical farming is revolutionizing the Brassica family. These plants thrive in controlled environments, and scientists are now able to manipulate light spectrums to increase the production of specific nutrients. Super broccoli, bred to contain 3 times the normal amount of glucoraphanin, is already on the market in the UK, Beneferte.
This represents a shift towards functional produce, whole foods that are biologically optimized to fight chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes. Ultimately, the inclusion of cruciferous vegetables in an obesity protocol is about metabolic hygiene. They are the janitors of the cellular world. They sweep out the excess estrogens, scrub the intestinal walls, and activate the genetic pathways that protect the body from its own toxic burden. To ignore them is to attempt a renovation of a house while leaving the trash inside. They are the bitter medicine that sweetens the prospect of a long, healthy life.
8. The slow-carb architects, beans and lentils. In the polarized world of diet culture, where carbohydrates are often indiscriminately purged, the legume family, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and split peas, stands as the great paradox. They are carbohydrate-dense, yet they are consistently associated with leanness and longevity. They are the staple food of the poor, yet they possess a nutritional profile that the wealthy struggle to replicate with supplements. For the obese individual, beans and lentils function as the slow-carb architects. They dismantle the insulin-spiking machinery of the modern diet and replace it with a steady, slow-burning energy grid. The investigation into legumes reveals a food group that effectively manipulates time, creating a metabolic phenomenon known as the second meal effect. The second meal effect is perhaps the most compelling argument for the inclusion of legumes in a weight loss diet. Clinical studies have demonstrated that consuming lentils for lunch does not just blunt the blood sugar spike of that specific meal, it actually blunts the blood sugar response to dinner hours later. The mechanism lies in the unique structure of legume starch. A significant portion of it is resistant starch and slowly digestible starch. It resists the enzymatic attack in the small intestine and ferments in the colon. This fermentation produces short-chain fatty acids like propionate, which enters the bloodstream and slows down gastric emptying. Essentially, the lentils you eat at noon are still working to control your metabolism at 7 p.m. This metabolic time travel is invaluable for the obese patient who struggles with evening cravings and nocturnal hypoglycemia. The protein-to-fiber ratio in legumes is unrivaled in the plant kingdom. A cup of cooked lentils provides roughly 18 grams of protein and 16 grams of fiber. This combination creates a satiety matrix that is mechanically and chemically difficult to overeat. The fiber absorbs water and expands, activating stretch receptors in the stomach. Meanwhile, the protein triggers the release of cholecystokinin, a potent appetite suppressant. Unlike animal protein, which has no fiber, or grains, which have little protein, legumes hit both satiety levers simultaneously. This makes them the ultimate hunger killer. For an obese individual attempting to maintain a caloric deficit,
The high satiety per calorie index of beans is the difference between misery and sustainability. We must also investigate the blue zones, the 5 regions in the world with the highest concentration of centenarians. From the rugged hills of Sardinia to the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, the one common dietary denominator is not kale or goji berries, it is beans. In these cultures, beans are not a side dish, they are the main event. They are the meat of the longevity diet. This historical precedence challenges the modern paleo-carnivore narrative that humans are solely designed for meat consumption. We have co-evolved with legumes for at least 10,000 years. The enzymes in our gut and the bacteria in our colon are primed to process them. The obesity epidemic is largely a phenomenon of the post-industrial diet, which replaced these slow-digesting legumes with fast-digesting refined flours. However, the lectin controversy requires a forensic examination. In recent years, popular diet books have demonized legumes, citing lectins, proteins that bind to carbohydrates, as toxins that cause leaky gut and inflammation. This is a classic case of scientific truth taken out of context. It is true that raw kidney beans contain phytohemagglutinin, a toxic lectin, but no one eats raw kidney beans. Soaking and boiling beans destroys the vast majority of lectins, rendering them harmless. Furthermore, low levels of lectins may actually have a hormetic, protective effect, stimulating gut cell regeneration. The epidemiological evidence is overwhelming. Populations that eat the most beans have the lowest rates of obesity, heart disease, and cancer. To avoid beans because of lectins is akin to avoiding water because you can drown in it. The danger is entirely dependent on the context and preparation. The microbiome impact of beans is profound, often evidenced by their reputation as the musical fruit. This gas production is not a sign of indigestion, it is the sound of a microbiome being fed. The oligosaccharides, raffinose and stachyose, in beans are prebiotics, food for the beneficial bacteria bifidobacteria and lactobacilli. In the gut of an obese individual, these beneficial species are often extinct, replaced by inflammatory strains. Reintroducing beans can cause temporary bloating as the ecosystem shifts, and the good bacteria repopulate and wage war on the bad. This is an adjustment period, not an intolerance. Once the microbiome adapts, the gas subsides.
And the host benefits from increased production of butyrate, which heals the gut lining and reduces systemic inflammation. Economically, beans represent the democratization of weight loss. Obesity is statistically higher in lower socioeconomic demographics, where the cost of fresh produce and lean meats can be prohibitive. Dried beans are the cheapest source of high-quality protein on the planet. They are shelf-stable, requiring no refrigeration, which eliminates food waste.
A diet centered on beans allows an individual on a strict budget to access top-tier nutrition. This accessibility makes them the most scalable solution to the global obesity crisis. Culinary versatility is another weapon in the legume arsenal. They can be utilized in soups, stews, salads, and even blended into brownies, black bean brownies, to hide fiber in desserts. The rise of chickpea flour and lentil pasta offers a way for pasta-addicted patients to retain their comfort foods while drastically improving the nutritional profile. A plate of red lentil pasta has half the glycemic load and 3 times the protein of white wheat pasta. These swaps allow for lifestyle modification without total lifestyle disruption. The environmental angle also plays a role in the future of food. Legumes are nitrogen fixers. They pull nitrogen from the air and deposit it into the soil, reducing the need for chemical fertilizers. As the world grapples with climate change and the resource intensity of cattle farming, the shift toward plant-based protein is inevitable. The pea protein boom seen in products like the Beyond Burger is just the tip of the iceberg. However, for weight loss, the whole bean remains superior to the processed isolate. The isolate removes the fiber and the resistant starch, the very components that regulate blood sugar. There is also a mineral component to consider. Beans are rich in magnesium and potassium, 2 electrolytes that are often depleted in obese individuals, particularly those with hypertension. The high potassium content helps to flush out excess sodium, lowering blood pressure and reducing water retention, bloating. This diuretic effect can lead to immediate, motivating drops in scale weight, which is often water weight, but psychologically boosting nonetheless. Ultimately, beans and lentils act as the metabolic metronome. They slow down the rhythm of digestion. They force the body to work for its energy.
In an age of instant gratification and instant calories, they provide a necessary resistance. They buffer the bloodstream against sugar, buffer the appetite against hunger, and buffer the wallet against cost. They are the humble brown pebbles that can slay the Goliath of obesity. They remind us that the most sophisticated nutritional technology is often found in the simplest, most ancient foods. To embrace the bean is to embrace a slower, steadier, and more sustainable form of human energy.
9. The chromatic assassins, berries, blueberries, strawberries. In the vast and often treacherous landscape of the modern supermarket, where sugar is hidden in everything from bread to pasta sauce, the fruit aisle presents a unique dilemma for the obese individual. For years, the ketogenic and low-carb movements have cast a shadow of suspicion over fruit, labeling it nature's candy and warning that fructose is the primary driver of fatty liver disease. While this holds true for the concentrated sugars found in mangoes, grapes, or dried dates, the investigation into the botanical family of berries reveals a starkly different narrative. Berries, specifically blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, are not merely fruits, they are chromatic assassins designed by nature to target the very mechanisms of metabolic syndrome. They represent the sweetness paradox, a food group that tastes like a dessert but behaves biologically like a vegetable. For the obese patient struggling to break the addiction to hyperpalatable sugary foods, berries offer the only safe harbor, a way to satisfy the primal urge for sweetness without triggering the insulin avalanche that leads to fat storage. To understand the power of the berry, one must first understand the concept of signaling colors. In the plant kingdom, color is communication. The deep bruising blues of the blueberry, the vibrant crimsons of the strawberry, and the midnight purples of the blackberry are not arbitrary decorations. They are the visible manifestation of polyphenols, specifically a class of compounds called anthocyanins. These pigments are produced by the plant as a defense mechanism against ultraviolet radiation and environmental stress. When a human ingests these stress-hardened compounds, they inherit that protection. For the obese body, which is in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, often referred to as metabolic arson, anthocyanins act as a systemic coolant. They do not simply scavenge free radicals, they modulate gene expression. Research has demonstrated that anthocyanins can downregulate the genes responsible for fat storage and upregulate the genes responsible for fat burning, lipolysis. They essentially reprogram the adipocytes, fat cells, to behave younger and more efficiently. The investigation deepens when we analyze the glycemic impact of berries. The fear of fructose is valid, but context is everything. In a soda,
fructose hits the liver like a tidal wave, overwhelming it and forcing the creation of visceral fat. In a berry, the fructose is encapsulated in a rigid matrix of water and fiber, particularly pectin. Pectin is a soluble fiber that turns into a gel in the digestive tract, slowing the absorption of sugar to a crawl. This means that a cup of strawberries, despite tasting sweet, has a negligible effect on blood sugar compared to a banana or an apple. This is crucial for the insulin-resistant individual. By consuming berries, the patient can enjoy the sensory pleasure sweetness, triggering the dopamine reward centers in the brain without the subsequent crash and craving cycle. It is a biochemical bait and switch that allows the dieter to outsmart their own biology. We must also explore the neurological dimension of berry consumption, often dubbed the brain berry effect. Obesity is increasingly linked to cognitive decline and brain fog, driven by neuroinflammation. The blood-brain barrier is meant to protect the brain, but systemic inflammation can weaken it. The flavonoids in blueberries, particularly gallic acid, have been shown to cross this barrier and accumulate in the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory and learning. But more importantly for weight loss, they impact the executive function centers that control impulse control. One of the hardest battles for an obese person
person is the decision fatigue that leads to binge eating. By reducing neuroinflammation, berries may help sharpen the cognitive resolve required to stick to a dietary protocol. They are brain fuel that clears the fog, allowing the individual to make better choices. Historically, the berry has been a staple of the hunter-gatherer diet for millennia, but the modern berry is a triumph of agricultural espionage and engineering. The strawberry we know today, Fragaria ex ananassa, did not exist in nature. It is a hybrid monster born in 18th century France. The story involved Amédée François Fraisier, a French spy sent to Chile to map Spanish fortifications. While there, he discovered a massive Chilean strawberry species with large fruit but no flavor. He brought plants back to France where they were accidentally crossed with the flavorful but tiny Virginia strawberry from North America. The result was the modern garden strawberry, large, red, and sweet. This history reminds us that humans have always sought to maximize the pleasure of fruit. However,
in doing so, we often breed out the nutrients. This is why wild varieties, like wild blueberries from Maine, are superior for weight loss. They are smaller, have a higher skin-to-pulp ratio, and contain nearly twice the antioxidant load of their cultivated cousins. The investigative dieter should always prioritize the smaller, darker, wilder variants when possible. The frozen versus fresh debate is another area where misconceptions must be dismantled. Many consumers believe that fresh produce is always superior. However, berries are incredibly fragile. From the moment they are picked, their nutrient profile begins to degrade due to oxidation and enzymatic activity. A container of strawberries that has traveled 2,000 miles on a truck and sat on a shelf for 4 days has lost a significant portion of its anthocyanins. In contrast, frozen berries are typically picked at peak ripeness and flash frozen within hours, locking in the nutrient profile. For the obese individual on a budget, frozen berries are not a compromise. They are often the superior choice. They are cheaper, available year-round, and nutritionally preserved in suspended animation. They allow for the daily inclusion of this superfood without the risk of spoilage and waste. Furthermore, we must address the role of berries in gut health, specifically regarding the bacteria Akkermansia muciniphila. This specific bacterial strain is often dubbed the skinny bug because it is found in high abundance in lean individuals and is strikingly absent in the obese. Akkermansia feeds on the mucus layer of the gut and strengthens the intestinal barrier. It is notoriously difficult to increase through probiotic supplements because it is anaerobic, hates oxygen. However, certain polyphenols found in cranberries, raspberries, and black currants act as a specific fertilizer for Akkermansia. By eating a diverse range of berries, the obese individual is essentially gardening their microbiome, cultivating the specific bacterial species associated with leanness. There is also a tactile and psychological component to eating berries. Unlike a smoothie or a juice which is consumed in seconds, berries require handling. Picking up a blueberry, chewing the seeds of a raspberry, removing the stem of a strawberry. These are microactions that slow down the eating process. This mindfulness is a critical tool in behavioral therapy for obesity. It reconnects the eater with the food source. The high water content, strawberries are 91% water, contributes to the volumetrics principle discussed earlier. One can eat a massive bowl of strawberries for the same caloric cost as a single tablespoon of peanut butter. This visual abundance soothes the anxiety of dieting deprivation. However, the organic imperative is strong with this food group. Strawberries consistently top the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list for pesticide residue. Because we eat the skin, where the pesticides accumulate, conventional berries can deliver a toxic load that counteracts their detoxification benefits. Many pesticides are obesogens, chemicals that disrupt the endocrine system and promote fat storage. Therefore, for the obese patient whose detoxification pathways are already overburdened, sourcing organic berries is a critical investment. It is better to eat fewer organic berries than to consume a large quantity of pesticide-laden ones. Looking toward the future, the berry industry is undergoing a high-tech revolution. We are seeing the rise of designer berries, such as the oishi berry, grown in vertical farms under optimized light spectrums to maximize sweetness and nutrient density. While currently luxury items, this technology promises a future where berries can be grown locally in urban centers, eliminating the carbon footprint of transport and ensuring peak nutrient retention. We are also seeing the exploration of non-sweet berries, like the sea buckthorn or aronia berry, which have astringent profiles but massive medicinal properties. As the palate of the public shifts away from the cloying sweetness of high-fructose corn syrup, these complex, tart flavors may become the new standard of gourmet nutrition. Ultimately, berries are the bridge between the old life and the new life for the obese individual. They are the transition food. They allow the patient to say yes to sweetness while saying no to metabolic dysfunction. They are small, self-contained packages of genetic information that tell the body to cool down, repair, and shed the excess weight. They are the chromatic evidence that nature wants us to be healthy, providing medicine that tastes like candy.
10. The lipid paradox, avocado in moderation. We conclude our investigation with the most controversial and paradoxical entry on the list, the avocado. In a dietary culture that has spent the last 50 years oscillating between low-fat and low-carb dogmas, the avocado stands as a defiant anomaly. It is a fruit, yet it contains almost no sugar. It is a plant, yet it possesses the fat content of bacon. For the obese individual, the avocado represents the lipid paradox, the counterintuitive truth that one must eat fat to lose fat. However, unlike the leafy greens or the egg whites, the avocado comes with a stern warning label: moderation. It is the only food on this list that can easily cause weight gain if abused. It is a tactical weapon that must be handled with precision. To understand why this butterfruit is essential for obesity treatment despite its caloric density, we must delve into the biochemistry of oleic acid, the evolutionary history of megafauna, and the hormonal mechanics of satiety. The primary asset of the avocado is its fatty acid profile. Approximately 70.
The avocado acts as a silencer. It provides the satiety floor that makes a caloric deficit sustainable. We must also confront the evolutionary ghost theory to understand the avocado. The avocado should not exist. It evolved during the Cenozoic era to be eaten by megafauna, giant ground sloths and gomphotheres, elephant-like creatures capable of swallowing the massive seed whole and excreting it miles away. When these megafauna went extinct roughly 13,000 years ago, the avocado should have followed them into oblivion. It was saved by human intervention. Indigenous peoples of Mesoamerica recognized its value and began cultivating it. This history is important because it highlights the unique nutritional density of the fruit. It was designed to feed massive beasts. It is packed with potassium more than a banana, folate, vitamin K, and significantly fiber. A single avocado contains roughly 13 grams of fiber. This combination of high fat and high fiber is incredibly rare in nature. The fiber forms a viscous mesh in the gut, while the fat delays gastric emptying. It is a double lock on hunger. The investigation into the avocado also requires a look at its rebranding. In the early 20th century, it was known in the United States as the alligator pear, a name that was deemed unappealing. The California Avocado Growers Exchange rebranded it as avocado, a derivation of the Aztec word avocado. This marketing genius, coupled with the lift of the fat ban in the 1990s, turned it into green gold. However, for the obese consumer, this branding has a dark side. The rise of avocado toast and the cultural obsession with healthy fats has led to portion distortion. A medium avocado contains roughly 250 to 320 calories. In the world of weight loss, calories still count. Eating 2 avocados a day, even if healthy, can easily push an individual into a caloric surplus. The moderation caveat in our title is not a suggestion, it is a mathematical requirement. The recommended serving for weight loss is typically 1/4 to 1/2 of an avocado per day. It is a garnish, not a main course. Culturally and economically, the avocado is a heavyweight. The global demand has created a blood avocado trade in Mexico, where cartels extort farmers and water-intensive crops drain local aquifers. This ethical dilemma forces the conscientious dieter to look for sources.
Buying domestic, Californian, or certified sustainable avocados is becoming a part of the nutritional conversation. But beyond the politics, the utility of the avocado in the kitchen is unmatched for the obese patient transitioning away from processed foods. It is the ultimate swap. It replaces mayonnaise on a sandwich, butter on a potato, and cream in a smoothie. These swaps reduce the intake of inflammatory omega-6 oils and saturated animal fats, replacing them with anti-inflammatory oleic acid. It allows for the creamy texture that the human palate craves, a texture usually associated with guilt, to be enjoyed as medicine. Furthermore, we must analyze the role of potassium. Hypertension, high blood pressure, is a nearly ubiquitous comorbidity with obesity. It is driven by high sodium intake and fluid retention. Potassium is the biological antagonist to sodium. It forces the kidneys to excrete salt and water. The avocado is a potassium bomb. By integrating it into the diet, the obese individual can naturally lower blood pressure and reduce the bloating that masks weight loss progress. It is a natural diuretic that spares the body the side effects of medication. The nutrient booster effect is another critical mechanism. Many essential vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are fat-soluble. You can eat all the spinach and carrots you want, entry number 6, but if you eat them with 0 fat, you will absorb very little of their vitamins. Adding avocado to a salad can increase the absorption of carotenoids from the vegetables by up to 15 times. In this way, the avocado acts as a force multiplier for the entire diet. It makes every other healthy food on the plate more effective. It unlocks the nutritional potential of the plant kingdom. In the futuristic landscape of food technology, we are seeing attempts to create low-fat avocados or shelf-stable avocado powders, but these innovations miss the point. The benefit is in the matrix of the fat and fiber together. The future of avocado consumption for weight loss likely lies in precision dosing, pre-packaged single-serving portions that prevent the guacamole trap of overeating. We are also seeing the rise of avocado oil as a cooking staple, offering the benefits of the fat without the fiber, though the whole fruit remains superior. Ultimately, the avocado serves as the final test of the dieter's maturity. It requires discipline. It demands that the individual understands the difference between healthy and low-calorie.
It challenges the binary thinking that fat is the enemy. For the obese person, the avocado is the luxurious reward that makes the journey bearable. It creates a metabolic shield, keeping hunger at bay and insulin low. It is the rich, creamy prehistoric survivor that, when treated with respect, helps the human body survive the modern famine of nutrition. It is the final essential tool in the top 10 arsenal, a reminder that in the fight against obesity, we do not need to starve, we simply need to feed ourselves the right fuel.